I'm excited to talk about something that has been an incredible impact on my business. This is called Sustainable Success at Scale. And so when I think about us here as creative entrepreneurs, we are doing so many different things. The life of an entrepreneur is one that juggles a million different hats, everything from creating content and posting reels to editing videos and recording podcasts and trying to write SEO and schedule your calendar and figure out Canva and all the million things. If you know what I mean by this, just say me in the chat. We juggle so many different things. So I would also love to hear you say in the chat, let me just get you to answer a couple of these questions. In the last 30 days, say me in the chat if you have worn multiple hats in your business, right? You've been maybe the cleaner, the customer service rep, the package and shipping assistant, and the content creator. Okay, all right, perfect. Now, what about if you have avoided being creative because of the day-to-day tasks? Creating the thing, doing the thing that you love, has just being in the weeds of the tasks gotten into your way in the last 30 days? Say me in the chat. What about working outside of regular business hours? So in the last 30 days, could I have caught you working into the evening, on the weekend? Say me in the chat. Now, we should also pause and give a round of applause to everybody who doesn't have to say me. So well done, you all who stayed within work hours. What about just dropping a ball? I feel like I'm juggling 1,000 balls and some of them go forgotten. I miss them and there they go crashing to the floor. If that's you in the last 30 days, say me. Okay, and the last one is, have you had an idea, but no time to actually implement it in the last 30 days? I think this one is potentially one that we all really struggle with. So we're in the room of like-minded people, all in a very similar place. And I just want to say that I see you. Just a few years ago, I would have been saying me. I would have been lighting up the chat with me, and all of those things. And so it was just one day that I realized, really tired and overwhelmed, that what got me to where I am today is not going to be the same thing that gets me to where I'm going. You know, this term solopreneur is something that we so very often wear as a badge of honor. Solopreneur, though, means that we're doing all and being all in our business. It is with grit and determination that we are proud solopreneurs. And I've been where you are, doing all and being all in my business. And one day I finally realized that this is very much like planting a garden in the shade that never gets any sun. And so I'm really familiar with this because once upon a time, I did such a thing. This is a photograph of my very first garden. And so me and my husband set out to build a summer vegetable garden that we were going to eat out of for the entire summer. So off to Lowe's we went. We spent $800 that we did not have on feeding ourselves for the summer. We bought the wood and the soil and the mulch, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I had to buy starter plants. And I poured myself into this summer garden, and I nurtured it all summer long. But something wasn't right. It kind of stayed looking just like this all summer long. It wasn't dying. It was alive, but it wasn't thriving, and it wasn't producing. Now, at the end of the summer, I'll never forget, I lifted this big, broad leaf on one of the plants, and underneath it, I found a tiny 3-inch eggplant. Man, did I pluck that little eggplant, and I walked it inside to my husband and I said, look, this is what our summer garden produced. I sliced that little eggplant and I fried it up in a pan, and we had the best $800 eggplant meal of our entire lives. So lesson learned, moving on. Doing all and being all in our business, as much as it's comfortable because we love having the control, it really comes at a cost. It comes at limited capacity because whether we Admit it or not, there's only so many hours in a day, which means that our growth is slowed down. It also means lack of expertise. No one is an expert in all of the different areas that we try to touch in our business. It also means no backup. You can't step away from your business without it stopping for anything, not for illness, not for emergency, not even for a vacation. And so this leaves you going to bed at night with the weight of the world on your shoulders, but it also leaves your business in an entirely incredible and incredibly vulnerable spot. The next one is that it just plain stifles creativity. When you're consumed in the doing, the day-to-day tasks, in the weeds, your creativity is just zapped if you're anything like me. And finally, it means lower impact. And I think that we're probably in a room full of people here that are really passionate about making as much of an impact as they can. If that's you, say me in the chat. If you're here, if you're in business because you want to impact people, right? I would argue that by not working yourself out of the system, it's a really selfish move in your business because you're lowering your ability to impact as many people as possible. Today, we're going to talk about this concept called the zone of genius. Now, you've heard of this concept before. It's a term coined by Gay Hendricks in his book, The Big Leap. The way I like to think about your zone of genius is when your greatest talents and your greatest passions overlap. And that is where you hang out, right inside of your zone of genius. This is where creativity, productivity, and pure joy for what you're doing align, and it truly leads to extraordinary results. So when you hang out here in your zone of genius, you experience increased productivity because when you love what you do and you do also what you're good at, productivity just comes really naturally. The next one is better creativity because as your work aligns with your passion, your creativity gets this big boost. The next is just joy, right? Like you get a deeper satisfaction at the work, doing the work at hand. And finally, it means greater impact because when you operate from this place, you bring your absolute best to the world and you create a bigger impact in less amount of time. I'm assuming that we all want more of these things. If that's you, say yes in the chat. Do you want more of all of these 4 things? If so, I would love to share with you how I've done this in my business today. Because I've had a peek at behind the curtain of literally thousands of self-made businesses, I've seen a pattern emerge, and there are 3 phases that we all go through. So here's the sequence. The first one is the dreamer phase. So if at any point you identify as a dreamer, will you please put dreamer in the chat? The dreamer phase is when you have solidly chosen your passion over a paycheck. You have decided that doing what you love is more important than having a, quote, stable job. Doing what you love is more important than anything else. Now, just a note, and for the record, I 100% believe that being an entrepreneur and taking all of your location and financial freedom into your own hands is more secure than a 9-to-5 ever could be, but maybe that's a different conversation for another day. So for me, this dreamer phase started in 2010. I set out to become a fabric designer, but I didn't know what I was doing or how to do it. My husband and I made this daring decision to do things that we loved regardless of the money. So we plunged into this decision the same year, for the record, that I realized we were also the same exact number as the poverty line for the state that we were living in. But I wanted to do something that I loved more than I wanted to just make money. So we put our heads together and we decided to sell one of our cars to buy me some time. And so off I went, chauffeuring my husband to his 9-to-5 every day. And I would drive myself back home, pull myself up to my IKEA desk in a 600 square foot apartment, and I would put my head down and I would get to work. Now, I made this dream come true in 2 years. At the end of 2 years, I entered the doer phase. Now, this one I believe we're all really familiar with. This is when we are hustling. We're doing all the things. We're taking online classes and reading books on marketing and literally doing and being everything in our business. Now, this progress is slow, but it is sure. And so this hustle doer phase will typically get you from really no income to upwards of $100,000. It will get you to the six-figure mark. Sometimes it'll get you to like $200,000. So it'll get you some momentum. You're busy doing, but you are seeing progress. So who here identifies as being in the doer phase? Put doer in the chat. If you're somewhere in the doing, all by yourself, a solopreneur making somewhere between 50 and 100K plus, you're in the doing. That brings me to phase number 3, which I call the decision phase. Now, the decision phase is where our lives are filled with the hum of the keyboard, the glow of the screen. It's our business and our work. It starts bleeding into our personal lives. We find ourselves working on weekends, late into the evenings. We find ourselves working on vacations, maybe missing really important things like soccer games or basketball practice, and our the relationships around us, they start to suffer. So I call this delegate or die. Okay, so if you're in the decision phase, trust me, I get it. I've been there. Go ahead and share with us in the chat, decision. So delegate or die, I know that sounds super dramatic, but let me explain. In phase number or in option number 1, we hit burnout, which means that our dream dies. Option number 2 is that we give up and we go back and get a day job. Again, our dream dies. Option number 3 is that we just get stuck. This means that we plateau. Our income plateaus, our business plateaus, but we remain at it. We're just stuck. This really means that your impact dies. Are we glad there's a fourth option? I'm here today because of the fourth option. The fourth option is that we SOS our way to freedom. Now, SOS stands for specialize, outsource, and scale. So let me break this down for you. It means that you are spending 90+% of all of your time inside your zone of genius, doing things that you both love and that you're really, really good at. This also means that we unlock these 3 huge freedoms, which I think is probably why we're all here today. If you're taking notes, you're going to want to circle 3 big freedoms. Who knows what they are? They are time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. I think collectively, as creative entrepreneurs, we all have these 3 same big freedom goals. So this concept is not unique to me, and I want to make sure to give credit where credit is due. It's a culmination of some really brilliant people. Dan Martell tells us to do a time and energy audit and buy back your time. Mike Michalowicz talks about designing your business to run itself in Clockwork. Gay Hendricks, of course, talks about leaping into your zone of genius inside the big leap. And then Michael Hyatt teaches this kind of quadrant system called the Freedom Compass inside Free to Focus. These are all books that you should read. Now, my version of this is kind of stupid simple. And it's where I really just stepped back and asked myself, what are the tasks that only I can do? My approach is that simple. So step number 1 is to calculate your freedom figure, okay? So your freedom figure, let's do an example here, is how much your time is worth per hour. It's your time's value. And it's a key factor in deciding what tasks you should keep and which tasks you should give away as quickly as humanly possible. So let's take this example for ease of math that you make even $100,000 a year. Well, if you work a 40-hour week, that's 2,080 hours. So for you, you're going to have to do some estimation. How many hours are you working a week? Figure that out for the year. If this is the case, you work full-time and you make 100K, your freedom figure is $48 an hour. I can't wait for you to calculate this freedom figure for yourself. If you can do so quickly, share it with us. This means that if you're doing anything outside of your zone of genius that you could potentially hire for less than this number per hour, you should be strongly considering it. Okay, that's your freedom figure. So I have a time audit approach that I love dearly that I want to give to you. This is called task tending, and it's going to walk you through. I'm not going to go into great depths here, but this download is going to walk you through how to monitor your tasks for 2 weeks and then rate them based on your talent, passion, value, and energy. And based on your score, you're going to figure out what you need to water, which is keep, what you need to prune, which is kind of refine or automate, what you need to pull, which is mean just stop doing, and what you need to transplant, which means to delegate. So there's a QR code. It's going to come up several more times if you miss it. That's the task tending worksheet that I have for you. So let me give you my own example of this freedom figure at work. Okay, so in 2013, I was 4 years into my business. Who can guess my freedom figure here? My freedom figure was $9 an hour. Now, this was 4 years into my business, which means for probably year 1, 2, and 3, I was at negative dollars per hour, okay? Or closer to zero at least. But this means that I wasn't delegating anything. I was very much doing. I was in the doing phase. Now, jump forward to 2018, just 5 years later, and my freedom figure was up to 114 hours. And I was a little bit late to the game in figuring this out. So I waited until then to make my very first hire. In hindsight, I should have done it much, much earlier. I made my first hire in 2018. Then I cannot wait to show you what happens. In 2024, so 15 years into my business, my freedom figure is over $3,000 an hour. I want to look at this from an SOS perspective, okay? So this huge elbow in the graph to the right, Huge elbow in 2018 was my very first hire. This signals that I started to prioritize doing only the things that only I could do. Because when you put yourself back in your zone of genius, you're doing the things you're good at and the things that you love. Secret is that those things are also the revenue generating things. Okay, so from an SOS perspective, I spent the whole first 10 years specializing. It should not take 10 years. You can do this much quicker. I just was a little late to the learning curve. Then I started to outsource in 2018 everything that I didn't have to be the one to do. Finally, my business took off and absolutely scaled. So that is your SOS, my example. So today, this is my garden. I had to redeem myself a little bit. This is the number one takeaway that I want you to have from today is when you obsess over doing only the things that you can do, your business is going to flourish. So I have 3 steps for you on how to make this happen. So step number 1 is to create what I call a voice guide. Now, a voice guide is very much like a brand guide, like you probably have colors and typography in your logo. Your voice guide is the same thing, but it represents your voice and your tone. For me, I would have argued for 10 years that my voice and how I responded to emails and how I wrote all of the things in my business was what led me to success. And so handing any part of that over to someone else was probably the most vulnerable thing that I'd ever done until I developed a voice guide, which meant that there were some guidelines for people as a brand to communicate. So number 1 is to ensure having a voice guide ensures consistency across all communication channels. It sets clear expectations and guidelines for anyone who's speaking on behalf of your brand. And it creates a unified and identifiable experience for your audience. So important. So it includes an overview of your business, an overview of your personality when it comes to communication, an overview of your audience. Who are you talking to? Also the tone, like probably already you can tell that I have a tone. to everything that I do, right? Also, language and vocabulary. What kinds of things do you say? Also, what kinds of things do you not say? Whether they be funny or I don't know, there's all kinds of things that I would not say that go into the voice guide, and all kinds of things that I say all the time, like terms that we use in our education. Grammar and formatting. Do you use exclamation points? How many do you use? What kind of grammar rules do you follow? And then also, are there visual guidelines? How are you breaking this all up? So I also have, this is the same QR, it's all in the same workbook together, a brand voice workbook that's going to literally walk you through step by step how to create this for your own business. And it's something that you can hand just the first person that comes in to help you in order to make sure that their voice is aligned with your voice. Now, not pretending to be you, right? But speaking on behalf of the team so that there's a unification across everyone speaking. Now, step number 2 is like my absolute favorite thing in the world, and that is to create an SOP library. Oh, it's so good. So SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure, okay? Now, this is like Miracle Grow for your garden. These are super simple trainings for any repetitive task in your business. So the very first SOP that I ever created was something so simple like, how do I take a video recording from Zoom, download it to my computer, upload it to our transcription service, and post it in my membership for students to watch. It takes about 10 minutes, and I held on to it for over a decade until I created an SOP and handed it to someone on my team. Then I began to obsess over all the other SOPs I could create as well. What the really cool thing is that all of these things that you're juggling, all of the different hats, become your SOP library. But that's not all. The next best part is that you bring it into your team as well. The magic begins when you also have your team members create SOPs. So our rule is that if you do a task twice, you create an SOP, which gives us this invaluable library of tasks, which means that if someone is out sick, if someone changes roles in the company, or a team member moves on from the company, you've got everything that made it happen right there and ready to hand off to the next person. Now, step number 3 is to start delegating. Now, I want to be the first person to admit that this is terrifying. I was terrified of it for a really long time, but I want you to know that all entrepreneurs worry about the same exact things. Money. Can I actually afford a hire? Is my business predictable enough to support someone else? But you have your freedom figure, so you already know the answer to this. The next one is quality. No one can do it like me, right? We've all caught ourselves saying that. And you're right. What you really need to know is that there are a lot of people who can do it better than you. But you have your SOP library, so you're good on quality control as well. What about care? No one will care like I do or sound like I do, but you have your voice guide. What about this one? Who struggles with guilt around handing off a task that you don't actually want to do yourself? Anybody? You can say me in the chat or spell out guilt. This one is tricky, but what you've got to understand is that just because a task is not in your zone of genius doesn't mean that it's not in someone else's. And so the real magic happens when you start to align all of the tasks for your business with other people's zone of genius. And so the majority of tasks that everyone is doing is all within inside their zone of genius. And yes, there are people for every task that find it inside their ZOG. The next one is hiring the wrong person and just making a mistake. And this is, we're right to be concerned about this, but I have some help for you here as well. The point is that the world is full of insanely smart, heartfelt, creative, devoted people who don't want to be an entrepreneur, and they are waiting for you to hire them. I wanted to just paint the picture for you here, right? Like, what does this really look like? And so here's a list of things that I water. That means I'm the only one who can do them. This is thinking about my vision. permission to just think and have a vision for where I'm going. Creating artwork. For some of you, it's artwork, but for many of you, this will be creating the thing that you started loving and doing at the beginning. Creating original content, so things like education, things like this opportunity, also podcasts. Leading my team, that's mine to hold. Developing other creative entrepreneurs and mentoring them, that's for me. And then being a wife and a mom. You should never outsource those things, right? Now I want to talk about some things that I have decided to transplant. So these things are things that I held on to for way, way too long. For a decade, I was the marketing director, doing all my Facebook ads, all my emails, all my email tags, all my sequences, customer service, responding to emails, answering questions. The list for each of these goes on and on and on. Administrative tasks like bookkeeping, payroll, data sorting, content like editing videos, planning posts, our social calendar strategy, design, graphics, PDFs, ebooks, all the things, programs like researching topics and taking care of our community, e-commerce, things like inventory management, shipping and packaging. And then this one is where I want to really hang out for a minute and especially talk to the moms in the room. We often forget about having help in our personal life and in our home. And this is often the place where we should start. It's often the easiest place to start, right? There's not a lot of training, like from a business perspective. And you can start getting help with your house, with your meal prep, with your yard, with your laundry, with your grocery shopping. That will expand the time that you have to work on your business, and just permission to not do it all, because no one can just do it all, okay? So I have this workbook that you should totally download. It's 26 pages. I built it for you. It's the task audit worksheet. It's how to craft your brand voice guide. It's what we call the SOP for SOPs. It's our guide to hiring. We do some really special stuff on my team when it comes to hiring, and sample projects and all kinds of different phases for potential employees. So I've outlined all of that for you there as well as a job description template. Now, I've also totally cheated, and I have 4 different podcasts that I recorded because I really wanted to talk to you all day. This is about tasks you should be delegating, how to do your brand voice guide on a deeper level, the art of delegation and how to do that, and then hiring as well. So you can find those at the same QR code. Okay, so what I know to be true is that in addition to doing all these things, right, we have to really ask ourselves, who do we want to become? And we have to start acting like the future, more successful version of ourselves before we become them, just like the lesson we heard this morning. Now, Circle asked me to look into 2025 and share some of my big bets and predictions with you. So I'm excited to do this. This is a look at some of the things that we're doing in my business. Number 1, we are focusing on getting really focused. As your business grows, so many different opportunities and rabbit holes grow with it. And this year, we're really narrowing our focus on what we do best. For us, it's surface pattern design. That's my industry. And so rather than getting distracted by every new opportunity, we're making a conscious decision to go really deep in our core expertise. This is going to help us push boundaries in our industry and create more impact and be more innovative. The takeaway here are that ideas are easy. Focus is really, really hard. And so this is what our focus is this year. The second one that I know is on all of our minds is the tension between humanity and AI, right? AI is here. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. But rather than really feel this tension, we've decided to embrace AI, but very intentionally stay rooted in our humanity. So we're going to step into 2025 embracing the power of what AI opens up to us to enhance our productivity, to enhance our reach. But as we adopt these way advanced tools, we remain equally committed to the more human elements that make our brand unique, like authenticity and vulnerability and connection. So how are we going to do this? There are 3 ways. One is leaning into experiences and community. So it's really experience-based over information. As information value goes down, the value of experiences and community is going up. And so it's our number one focus as we plan out things for our membership and our courses and our community. The second one is by incorporating print and tactile experiences. I'm personally so excited about this, but in a world really dominated by digital experiences, we're betting on creating offline tangible touch points that deepen the connection with our audience. From a beautifully crafted print publication that people are holding in their hands to a product shop that's brand new, we want our community to really experience us in a tactile way. Number 3 is something that I'm calling growing in public. I think that this is going to be really fresh. We are launching a product shop, and with it, we're launching something called the Greenhouse, which is a space where we are committed to very vulnerably, very transparently, and authentically share our wins and our losses. So we're rolling out this brand new product shop, like I said. We're calling this part of it the Greenhouse. We're embracing this kind of transparency. We've never done it before, and we're going to be sharing all of our failures, our wins, our financial reports, our profit margins, all of the lessons learned as we grow this shop to show people what's possible and how we're doing it. This is through a $5 a month paid newsletter that we're calling the Greenhouse. Okay, my friends, back to the ZOG. This is where, again, you hang out where your talents and your passions overlap. This is when we transform into true professional creatives. I don't think that we should just merely survive. I think that we should thrive, because I fully believe that you should be able to do what you love and be fully present with your family. Have a wildly successful business. Take 30 days off if you want to. Have hobbies outside of your work and have time to be creative. So, my friends, plant your garden in the sun. Don't be a 3-inch, $800 eggplant. Rather, be in the sun and thrive. Thank you all so, so much. Here's that QR code for you one more time if you need it for the workbook and the podcast for today. Think I'm doing pretty good on time. I'm going to...
You rocked it. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I already emailed Tessie on your team to get all the links of all the workbooks and worksheets so that we can include them in the replay.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was so actionable. The slides were obviously beautiful. Your brain is just stunning. A few questions if you have a few minutes before we bring Jasmine Starr on. Is that okay?
Of course, of course.
Okay. Also, the wallpaper in your office, chef's kiss. It's beautiful. Okay. So the first one was around, what do you suggest as the most critical first hire? And this is a question from Amanda.
Amanda, I love this question. So Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, super great book. Highly recommend everyone watch it. He has something called the replacement ladder, which is very similar to what I would suggest as well. You basically start at the bottom and work your way up. So at the bottom is really a VA. It's a virtual assistant. And so I think that as we grow our team or the people who help us, right, we go from generalists to specialists. And I am just now in my business, we're moving from 12 to 15 people. And this is the first time that I really feel that we're going deep into specialists. Before that, it's generalists for the most part. And what that means is that you and I wear multiple hats in our business all day long. And when we go to hire, we often think that it has to be really, really acute, like very exact, and it doesn't. Other people are 100% capable of wearing multiple hats just like you. The main point is that you need help. So get help. And I think the perfect way to do that is a virtual assistant. That person can kind of grow into other positions as well, like customer service. You should get out of your inbox as quickly as possible. And then if you're product-based, like shipping management and that kind of thing. And then if you have a big community management was one of my first hires as well. So that's where I would start and go up from there.
Amazing. Thank you. There was a question from Alliance of Professional Tattooists. which I love that.
Ooh.
What about, I know I have some tattoos as well. What about when you don't have the budget to delegate? And I think there's an aspect of this that's very real, and there's also an aspect of this that's mindset. So can you speak to both?
Yeah, totally. So the very real one is that your decision has to be data driven. Can you afford it or can you not? It's just a numbers question. So go back to your freedom figure. Can you outsource anything for less than your freedom figure? So if it's $20 an hour, can you outsource something for less than that? If you truly don't have the budget, you can always think about things like interns, students who really want to come learn underneath you, and also like pulling parents out of retirement, like anything that you need to do to get out of all the doing until you can really afford it properly. But go back to your freedom figure. Now, mentally, we oftentimes feel like our business isn't trustworthy. And how could we possibly bring someone else's livelihood, be responsible for theirs as well? And so, just again, there are so many people in the world who don't need a livelihood, right? They maybe maybe they've been a stay-at-home mom and their children just went back to school and they're looking for some way to help another business. And it's okay if it's 3 hours a week or 20 hours a week. They can ebb and flow. There are people like that all over the world. So it doesn't have to be super, super consistent. I would just say be really clear about that up front and you'll find the perfect person.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for addressing both pieces.
Yeah.
Question from Anderson that just came in. I love this question. Is it okay to share everything with the team about the business, including our biggest strengths, personal traits? It's kind of like, where are maybe the boundaries in the business? Like how transparent are you as a leader, essentially?
Mm. This is such a great question. Another book that I think, so leadership, huge topic and so important. Also one that I never envisioned myself a road I would be on. I was in solopreneur mode, hardcore, my friends. And so what an interesting concept to be stepping into leadership. One of my favorite books around this is Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. Super, super good. So I very much love full transparency with my team, full transparency about my strengths, my weaknesses, the business's strengths and weaknesses, the business's successes and failures. We do lots and lots of things like sharing numbers, where we're at, if we're on track or off track with our goals. The flip side to that, though, is that I think it's really important for you to also have a coach. I think that having someone that has truly been ahead of you, who has walked the path and can pour into you as the leader is really important, because if you don't have a coach, you will use your team for that part of it as well. And it's not really your team's responsibility to like mend you back together after you got a horrible comment on Instagram or something, right? Like really have a coach who can go ahead of you and pour into you as the leader of your team and your business. That's really important.
That's really great advice. You are positioning yourself as a leader and also getting the support that you need from maybe not your team. So I think that's really, really great advice. Bonnie, thank you so much for being here. So much love for you in the chat too. For those of you with us live, can you drop your like love and your biggest takeaway from Bonnie so that she can read it and feel it? Because no matter how many times you do this, I know you do this a lot, it's like so heartwarming to see your work mean something to people and like really connect. And this session really resonated with people. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and everything that you bring to the world.
Love you all. Love what you're doing. An incredible conference. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.